Hello, Yaya's little munchkins and cuties. How are you on this Wednesday? It's good to be with you again. It's story time again. Yes, it is. And Yaya's excited to read it tonight. When we ended last night, remember Tabitha was at the temple and she was talking to the older lady who was sitting there? We have a picture to show you. See, this is Tabitha. Let me make sure you can see it. Tabitha talking to that older lady. And what was it that was so exciting just as we finished that the old lady told Tabitha? Yes, she told Tabitha that she knew her father that had been brought in. She saw them bring him in. And so let's find out what happens now. It's one step closer to what Tabitha can hear to find out where her dad is, so maybe they can rescue him. Are you ready? Okay, time to settle down, snuggle up, and here we go. "What news do you have of my father?" Tabitha gasped. The old woman closed her eyes, raised her face to the sun, and then she began to speak. "They brought the man here in chains," she said, "a tall man, a shepherd and a Jew, and 2 others with him. They mocked him and called him citizen, bowing down to him as insult. Then they took him to the fortress of Antonia on the other side of the city, where he sits even now in a dungeon cell waiting to be executed." Tears came to Tabitha's eyes as the old woman finished. She was about to ask how the woman knew all this when Zechariah's voice thundered from behind her. "Tabitha," he barked, "we must go." Tabitha looked back at the priest and then back at the woman who was now staring at her. "I thank you for this information," Tabitha said. "And what may I call you?" "I am Anna," the woman said, "daughter of Phanuel and a prophetess of God." "Tabitha, come!" Zechariah shouted. "I must go now," Tabitha said to Anna. "We must save my father and then go to Bethlehem to see the Messiah." "I shall send Jotham of Jericho your way should our paths meet." Tabitha stood up and she ran over to Zechariah, who said, "I have had no fortune in finding information on your father," he said. "I have," Tabitha said, to the old priest's surprise. "He is a prisoner in the fortress of Antonia." "Antonia?" Zechariah gasped. "That is the fortress built by Herod, but now it is used by the Roman legion. We must go there at once." As they headed back through the court of women and then through the court of Gentiles, Tabitha considered if she had not stopped from following Zechariah into the temple, she would never have met Anna. Perhaps God knows what he's doing after all, she decided. Zechariah led the way out through the front gate and down the many stairs of marble. He turned to the right into the very heart of Jerusalem, dragging Tabitha behind him by the hand. Turning first one way and then the other down the streets, he led them in such a maze that Tabitha knew she would never find her way out by herself. As they approached a street wider than the rest, they began to hear the shouts of a great crowd of people. Making one last turn, Tabitha saw a mob of people, all of them looking away from her, but towards the end of the street. She looked up too and saw a tall tower surrounded by a wall protected by Roman soldiers. "The fortress of Antonia?" she asked. "Yes," Zechariah answered, "and trouble is brewing as well." A moment later, screams erupted from the other end of the street. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, and Tabitha watched as a dozen men, Jews by the look of them, came running up the street with swords in their hands. They ran past Tabitha so close that she could smell the sweat on their bodies and see the terror on their faces. But before she even had time to think about these things, she heard a thunder of running horses. She looked back just in time to see the 4 huge animals galloping up the street. Each horse with a Roman soldier on his back. The soldiers kicked their horses to go faster, and in a flash they pounded past Tabitha, such that the very ground was shaking. As the Jews and the Romans vanished down the street, the crowd of people began milling about, talking about what they had just witnessed. Opinions were flying like dust in a storm, and some even suggested that they should all join the Zealots. Zealots? Tabitha questioned. What is a zealot? Zechariah shook his head in disgust. They are Jews who do not know how to behave as Jews, he said. They think that by causing trouble for the Romans, they will free us from the tyranny. Should we not fight back when we can? Tabitha asked. We should follow the ways of Jehovah, Zechariah answered, even when it does not make sense to us. Tabitha thought about that for a moment and thought it made a lot of sense. Come now, the priest said, let us see what has taken place at Antonia. They pushed their way down the street as people continued to gossip about the Zealots. From what they said, Tabitha learned that the Zealots had tried to attack the fortress but had been easily beaten back by the Romans. Inside, she shivered at the thought that the attack might cause more problems for her father. Finally, the two travelers reached the base of the fortress. It was made of red stone and had a long stairway up to the gate, much like at the temple. A ring of soldiers stood guard around the base of the stairway. They held their spears out at arm's length with the wooden end braced against the ground. This allowed the sun to glint off the spears, drawing Tabitha's attention to their deadly pointed tips. Hold! One of the soldiers barked at Zechariah. Do not approach, or you will die. The priest bowed, and he said, I am no zealot and no threat. I seek only information on a prisoner. There is no information here that a Jew needs, except that he will die if he defies Rome. I know this well, Zechariah said, but the information is not for me. It is for this poor child here. A Jew is a Jew, the Roman sneered. Now stand away. All the time Zechariah was talking to one Roman soldier, Tabitha was watching another one. He was behind the line of standing soldiers, but he was lying on the ground, bleeding. Without asking and without even thinking, she pushed her way between two of the guards and ran to the injured man. Instantly, she saw that he was wounded in the side. She ripped off the arm of her tunic, and she held the cloth on the wound of the Roman soldier. Meanwhile, the soldier closest to Zechariah whipped around and he raised his spear. He pulled back his arm and was ready to release his weapon when Zechariah grabbed the end of the spear and knocked it to the ground. Furious now, the soldier spun around quickly and he snatched up the spear, this time aiming it at the priest. Hold! The voice sounded like the roar of an angry lion and instantly got the attention of all the guards. The soldier about to skewer Zechariah turned around towards the voice and he yelled, Hold! But Centurion, this Jew attacked me! I saw many zealots attack today, the voice continued. The priest was not among them. And why would you kill a small girl whose only crime is helping one of your comrades? Tabitha finally found the source of the voice. It was a tall, broad Roman. Gold ornaments glittered on his red cape. He stood firmly at the top of the stairs, his fist on his hips, eyeing the soldier who threatened Zechariah. Lower your lance, the centurion commanded. And then, with hands still on his hips, he walked the dozen steps down to where Tabitha tended the wounded man. Will he live? The centurion asked. I believe so, Tabitha answered. The wound is shallow, and I have stopped the bleeding. The centurion nodded, and then he lowered himself on one knee, putting his face close to Tabitha's face. Why would a Jewish girl help a Roman soldier? He asked. Tabitha didn't hesitate to answer. Because he is in need of help, she said. The centurion stared at her for a long time, and then he nodded. And what is a Jewish girl doing at the fortress of Antonia at the first place? Tabitha gulped, and then she looked at Zechariah on the street below. Zechariah nodded, urging her to tell the Roman the truth, and so she did. When she had finished, the centurion stared at her for another long time. I know of this case, he said, and I know the fate of your father. Well, here is Tabitha and Zechariah at the fortress where her father is being held and supposed to be executed. And now she has caught the attention of the Roman centurion, which the centurion is like the head guy for all the Roman soldiers. And so he was telling the one not to throw his spear or hurt Zechariah or Tabitha. And now maybe he will help her with her father. I think that's why Zechariah was nodding yes to her and telling her to go ahead and tell the Roman centurion the truth. Sometimes it's very scary, but sometimes it's best to tell the truth. Well, it's always best to tell the truth, but sometimes, even though it's scary, we should tell the truth, because if God is taking care of us, He's going to make everything work out good, right? That's right. Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Persecute means they give you a lot of trouble, they may hurt you, things like that. So Jesus said we're supposed to love them and pray for them. What a strange idea. Love those who hate us? Why would Jesus say such a thing? Probably because Jesus has seen the power of hate and the power of love, and he knows which one works. God is love himself. 1 John tells us that, and when there is love, there can be no hate or violence. So Tabitha was showing the love of God by helping the Roman soldier. What if that would have been one of the very soldiers that was there when her father was arrested? Don't you think she would have wanted to be mean to him and say, go ahead and bleed, get yourself a Band-Aid? She might have. Sometimes we feel like that ourselves when people do things wrong to us. But here is Tabitha showing the exact example of God and his love for us. Maybe tonight you can think about that, and then tomorrow you can show someone else that you don't like very much, show them how God loves them. How about it? Okay, well, you think about that. I hope you have a very good night and good sleep. Yaya's going to sleep good tonight, and I will see you tomorrow, okay, for the next part of our story. I love you. Bye-bye.